On the show this week, Chad Blasi and I visit with JR the Handler, tour manager for country music star Justin Moore. We talk about his start in the music business, local legends, the Justin Moore podcast, and Chad's nervous tick. If you are a fan of music and stories, then you're going to absolutely love this episode. Get ready for some laughs and some serious insight into the music industry. And make sure to subscribe and like the show on the platform you are seeing or hearing this on. And check out tigsbits.com for all of the latest on the show. Welcome to Tigs Bits. We have JR the Handler. He and I have a mutual friend, Mr. Chad Blasi, who I know y'all have heard, seen, and listened to over the years. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on, JR. He's got a oh yeah. We're gonna
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, those hands have been flying for the last hour. So.
I've known this guy 20-something years, Tig. Same, nothing has changed, brother.
Well, that makes me happy. Number one, I think that is a great place to start. It was I've been wondering about that for a long time, Blasi, because it's carried on over to my family, my friends, new friends. I continue this on, and I'll just do it randomly, and me and Tammy will be like, "Oh yeah," and we just get the yip. So, what started that?
You know, I'd love to actually tell you a story of how it started, but let's be honest, dude. I got a ton of extra energy in my body, and dude, at some point, it has to release at some level. You know what I mean? And I've developed, just over time, different little things I do. Old knee shaking, sitting in class or whatever, bored as hell, and then I finally got where dude, it was just kind of like this mass build up, and it's like, it's got to get out.
There it is.
Like, too much.
Classic.
I'm over-energized, Like, I got to get a little release. It's like a pressure release system, for energy.
If you could do that, and you're smart enough, and you'll read enough books to figure it out and do what you have to do, you could do that and figure out how to shoot like one of those blue energy balls, like in Mortal Kombat or something. That's what you're like, I figured it out. There it is. Now I can relax.
Yeah,
there it is.
This is all you got to do. You just build it up.
We'll have to look into that. That might be the lost ancient technology we need that move the pyramids. That might be the lost technology.
You could take that show on tour.
Yeah.
I mean, you could start to handle Blasi.
That'll sell you some records, brother.
Sell out every arena. Dude, you could be the next Salt Bay. If we could figure out a way to make this work with your nervous tick.
I know some promoters. I'm just saying.
Man, I appreciate the thought. I've never even thought about that. Like, that is a lot of energy going to one spot.
But it does work because it's kind of like I get. It's kind of like that.
It is.
It works good. And you say we haven't met, but Blasi turned me on to your podcast right when you got kicked off, and so I listened some then, and you know how it is. I listened to a million, so I lost in the ways, but I've listened to some recently. So I feel like I know you. It's like a podcast. If you listen enough, you feel like you know the person, especially if it's a conversation piece like you've done, because I listened to your buddy about the artifacts and the metal detecting, which I've been wanting to get into that for a while.
That was neat, wasn't it?
So Hank Williams Jr. is that's his thing. He's been doing that for years. He has one of the largest collections, and I've heard him in tons of interviews. And if you talk to him in person, you don't ever talk about music with Hank Jr. You better talk about hunting or Civil War artifacts, because that's all he wants to talk about. So it's always been a thing. Your buddy was real neat because I've been wanting to get into it, and that helped nudge me a little bit. And then Tommy, the Cajun legend from Baton Rouge, Tommy Crazon. It's so funny because my wife's from Houma, Louisiana. So listening and the stuff and all my buddies from down that way and stuff, I feel like I'm sitting in a room with them when I heard when you guys were going at it the other day. That was fun.
That dude's a sports legend in South Louisiana for sure.
Yeah.
Knows his stuff. That's where I got my first start in doing radio things and all of that. I don't know how. I think it will dive into your story. I think it's kind of one of those things. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Walked into a studio with a buddy, and he was doing a show already. And then he's like, "Hey, I was just sitting in the same room while they're talking, and I think they could obviously tell I had an opinion about whatever it was they were talking about. Like, I need the mic. I need the mic. I've got something to say." And then I did when they came back from commercial, and then it's just been kind of going ever since. But how did you get into becoming the handler?
Well, it's funny talking about that. I never thought about it this way, but even the podcast thing, I practiced this in college too, because of a local legend. Blasi, I can remember staying up all night and calling Amos in the mornings and talking shop. Right before I went to bed, I'm laying in bed, last drink of the night, about to go down, and I'd call in Amos. There's no telling if they had that recorded somewhere what I sounded like. And he would call me out on the air and say, Runnels, you must have not been to bed yet or something, or getting up early. He would mess, he knew. And I would talk to these guys about, but I was engaged at that time of the morning, as you know. So anyway, it's kind of like I practiced for this before I did the music thing, because same thing, kind of fell into music. I was bartending, and Charles Petrie was roommates with Dave Wost, who was lead guitar player in Wayne Mills' band. So he said, after we got done, let's go to the front porch where Wayne had played. And back then the bars would close at some point, but then they would stay open for the owner and all his and the entertainers and all that stuff for several more hours. So we were going over there after the bars closed. So we ended up there, and I was aware who Wayne was because I'd heard one of his CDs, played at parties and stuff already. And then from there went to another after party till it dwindled down. It was just me and Wayne and Charles Petrie. I said something about going home, and Wayne, it's like, you got a couch somewhere to park the van? I was like, yeah, come on. So he crashed. Next day we chit-chatted. He said, you ought to be in the music business, so you're pretty sharp on your feet late at night. You know how to talk to people and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm from Eclectic, Alabama, bro. I might as well be an astronaut. I was like, how do you do that? And he was like, come to Tuscaloosa Tuesday. You can meet my road manager, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. And that was 20 years ago, like this month, actually.
Wow.
Wayne at the time was a big regional star that was shaking hands with Nashville. And it was perfect for me. It was Southern rock, country, blues. He was real open to all types of music, as I was, because I loved music all my life and delved into different things. But once I got to college and met, got tight with like 50 other guys that were my age, and we're all from kind of a different place but kind of the same. It got deep, and then I was just like a sponge. I loved it. I always liked music. Wayne was that way too. So when I got in there, I thought, this is great. It's like the Allman Brothers meets Charlie Daniels meets Hank Jr. I'm like, this guy's rocking. And then I just kind of stayed with it, and figured it out. Started out selling T-shirts, and then this, and then one thing led to another, and like I said, 20 years. It's crazy to think about it that way.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And here you are.
Here you are. You made it all the way to Tigs Bits. Congratulations.
That's it. Hey, it's an honor. It's so big I couldn't get it in with a dump truck. It's just a huge honor. You don't even know how much you bench, Chad. How about that? We had our local guy that was his thing, Mike Amos. He would anybody you saw, he'd come say, hey, how you doing? How's your mom and dad doing? How much you bench? And you're like,
how much you bench,
Whitney?
Son? That's the first question.
How much you bench? It's
100%. That's the first question out of his mouth. He want to know how much you can bench press.
75-year-old lady. How much you bench? Amos, legend.
And usually after he got that answer, he shoved him out of the damn camera view. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, and he was notorious for holding the mic to the wrong person. If he's talking, he had it by them, and if they're talking, he had it by him. He was notorious. I'm actually, we talked about that. Now, currently, I work for Justin Moore, country music singer, and one of my best friends in the world. He's from Central Arkansas, just a good old boy. I've told my Blasi and all my other fraternity brothers he'd fit right in with some boys from Elba or something. You know what I mean? He's just like our buddies. Not only am I tour manager for Justin Moore, but we also do a podcast, the Justin Moore Podcast, we started our 5th season. Actually, we recorded before I came on with you guys today.
I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, well, it's been 3 years. We started in 20, but we've done the way we did the seasons. We broke the first one up, I think, or something. Somehow we did. Yeah, that's what we did. The first one, we had 2 seasons the first year. And then we changed it to a season was like a year, like in sports. So we recorded that today, and we were talking about local legend type people like that, talking about who in your area, there's always somebody, no matter where you're from, that's a weather person, a sports person, a morning talk show, a something that you're just like, this character, everybody's got one, and they got a crazy name usually too. Oh, yeah. Justin was talking about one in his Ed Pringle or something, and he had this old tan, and he just looked like he just got out of the tanning bed. His hair was always out of style and perfect. And like our guy Amos would always walk around and, he'd grab it, he's scratching himself and how much you bench, he was just all over the place. But he was great. I mean, he was a local legend. He's a treasure.
Dude, he just got inducted into the Troy Sports Hall of Fame.
As he should.
You know, he didn't even play. Well, he actually did play football. But he was not like a stellar athlete.
Right.
But just for being Mike Amos, I mean, you know, it's like he just got inducted into the Troy Hall of Fame, and there it is. I ran into his son at the Red Bar on Sunday. Sunday, he was sitting right next to me, and we sit there and talked about
Awesome.
it. Yeah, man, he said his daddy pure cried when he found that out. He was happy.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah, he's a character. He is a character.
Well, you know, and then just your local person, like in Alabama, you got James Spann. You know, if you see him on the weather, you're like, oh, something's gonna happen. You know, and then you guys in Louisiana. Yeah, I know it was forever. Everybody always said in Louisiana was Bob Breck. Bob Breck comes on. Bob Breck's going to give you the weather, you know, and you better get your stuff and go or whatever.
Right.
So that's just funny. We were talking about that because I'd be interested in the names and some of the pictures, and if people could elaborate in their area how ridiculous some of these people are. We got one here local here. His name's Ed Bloodsworth. I mean, not that anything's wrong with that name, but it's just a funny name for a. It's like Ron Burgundy, you know. It's kind of like that. It's.
You're right. Our guy's name was Henry Downs, and his brother Porky. That's who immediately comes to mind. They really did make an impact, especially in the mid '80s when Mid-South Wrestling came through little bitty Florine.
Nice.
And Henry really got upset in the gym that night. I don't even remember if it Junkyard Dog or Rock and Roll Express, whoever. It was some of those cats. They're wrestling. Henry got pissed, threw a damn chair in the ring, got escorted out. My dad tells me that at the end of the day, and anybody listening in Florine, I'm sorry, this may not be the truth. You could come on here and defend it. Somebody, whoever was helping to promote that show, this is 83, 84, somewhere in there. They ran off with the house money, and they didn't pay the wrestlers. And you know, I think I've heard stories that happened a lot
back then
to those guys back in the day.
Oh yeah, you had all kinds of crazy stories, and it wasn't a lot of money most of the time. Yeah, the Mid-South territory, that was Bill Watts' territory, and that's where Jim Ross came from, the good old JR. But yeah, it was that way in music too. Back then, it wasn't like now where it's all structured. You got, you know, it's just kind of outlaw stuff. You know. There's no way to keep up. It's a bunch of good old boy system. It's small towns, rural America, you know, no telling.
Right.
You know, back in the day, you've seen it in movies and stuff, but back in the day, before you had a lot of television exposure and things, you could be a famous act and there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 impersonators of you going around and pretending to be you, and nobody else knows the difference if you sound close enough. You know what I mean? Muddy Waters is in Chicago, but he's also played in 4 other places that guys are claiming to be Muddy Waters, you know, and crazy stuff like that. Also on promoters, I've heard stories of George Jones in his heyday of being No Show Jones, promoters promoting that they were going to have a show with George Jones, knowing they did not have a show with George Jones, only for fans to show up and wait 3 hours to be told they didn't have a show, but during that 3 hours, eat popcorn and drink beer. So the guy who had the building still made some money.
Oh, just use that.
And made George look like
that's crazy. Big smoke screen.
Made George look terrible, but he never said it. And then how are you gonna fight that? How much time and money is that gonna cost to fight every one of those?
Wow.
So it's the fans believe it.
It kind of leads me, JR, to a question I've got for you. Like today, these days with Ticketmaster and things like that, like, I mean, you have to, I guess, have some kind of safeguard in order to protect the artist and all, and you can't just maybe go in-house like you used to could. How does all that work, man? There's such an uproar with Ticketmaster.
Man, it's all a big mess. It's all kind of streamlined in one direction. It only works one way. You know, that's just how it works. There's not a lot of options that are achievable and attainable right now. But yeah, I've noticed it as even a fan. It's a mess with our stuff. You know, like going back to that, there's so many paper trails now. You know, I mean, all of our stuff's automated. You're not even selling tickets. People don't have to go to somewhere to a record shop and get tickets anymore. It's all done online, and like, you know, most all stuff is done within the first day or two of tickets are going on sale.
Just super streamlined.
Yeah, it really is. And then even on our end, you know, I can remember when I started, you know, you'd be, you know, and it's probably still this way in clubs and stuff, but like, you know, having to make sure to get square up and and be some tension, have to make sure you get your money and stuff. But nowadays, like, I don't even think about it because, like, there's a vetting process. And, like, if you squirrel on us, man, we work for the biggest agency in the world. You're never going to get a talent in there. We got lawyers. I'm always like, I ain't knife fighting nobody anymore for $600. I said, the damn lawyers can earn their check. So, but I'm sure it sucks in a lot of levels. But for us, as far as getting square, on things like that. We work with good promoters. It's really not that way anymore where we're at. And I'm pretty sure it's most that way because of, being able to say what happens. You can't, a club's not going to be able to sit there and just screw artists over and over and over without word getting out anymore, and then, people fight about it on Facebook before they let that keep going. It's a wild world out there, but I'll say as far as what I have to do on a day-to-day basis, technology and the formats and the software we get to keep our numbers straight and things I need to get done and tour logistics and all that stuff, it keeps up to date and it's always being upgraded. And again, back to my crew, those people like them, their buddies, figure all that out and then give it to us non-tech guys to be able to figure it out, regular road guys.
How many people does it take to, I know that Justin Moore is currently on tour. I think y'all just played Shreveport.
We did. Yeah, we played Saturday night, the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium where the Louisiana Hayride originated from. Very cool.
I thought I saw a picture on social media. Isn't it? I mean, it's a historic place. I've been there growing up in North Louisiana, of course.
The shower there where he supposedly showered in the dressing room, that's our production office. They have it's blocked. It's still there, but blocked off so you can't go in it. But that's supposed to be where he showered. They have some pictures of him when he was there and stuff. So for a while, they did something really cool. We've played there several times. The last time we played there, they had to cut a piece of the original floor out to put this elevator shaft in. And what they did was they saved that floor and took like a 2x2 inch square and put it in a plaque with a piece of the original rope and did a little thing for each artist that came through there and played for a while. They didn't give us one this time. I guess it's the first time you go, or they only had so many, but we got one last time, which was a piece of the original floor where they had to cut out for this. So that was really cool because if you think about you talking about Hank Williams, you talking about Ernest Tubb, you talking about George, young baby George, not before he had a drink, George Jones. I mean, you talking about some legendary stuff.
That's crazy.
Louisiana Hayride, because, back then there were a couple of those in big markets all over the country. You had that, and you had the one in Chicago, and then the Grand Ole Opry, and you had the Jamboree over here, and like the Opry type shows. And the Hayride was the second. It was number 2 to only the Opry probably back then. Big deal.
Absolutely incredible. The history that has come through just there where Justin Moore's from, and North Louisiana, the whole Arklatex, that whole little area, and it still pumps out a lot of talent.
Right.
It's just it's ingrained in that region for whatever reason. That kind of leads into a question: how much, when you have a tour like y'all are on right now, how many people are involved in a tour and running it with trucks and the lighting and the sound and all of that stuff?
Yeah, for us, we've kind of scaled back a little of our stuff since COVID. We're just getting kind of back in full speed with that, so we'll be ramping up more. But we're usually on the road part. There's about 20, 22 people every day, including me and Justin, that have to travel to do the live shows. And then there's a handful at the office, the management office. Then there's obviously the record label, the publishers, the business managers. Probably another dozen in Nashville that could be on standby that might be needed at any time during a day. But on the road, about 20, 22 of us. And most of our guys have been there a long time. People don't rotate in and out very, very much. It's a family type atmosphere. Everybody's, for the most part, married and kind of winding down. It's a whole different tour than it was 15 years ago. I can say that.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I always say, as long as I'm the worst one, we're good, because I know how far I'll take it. As long as I'm the worst one, we're good. If anybody's worse than me, man, I got to sober up to watch them, because, oh, Lord. But that goes back to that, too. I was kind of always that way. Even in college stuff, I was always the guy. We were all partying. If the cops showed up, I had to talk to them.
Oh, dude, you were kind of... Honestly, you and I were kind of alike like that. it would be that 2 or 3 in the morning situation, and it's like, who are the people that can actually still carry a conversation at this point? And I remember him well. Like JR would come walking up, and he'd be like, "Did this guy just get out of bed? Like, how's he doing this?" But I always felt like I was always the voice of reason in those crazy moments. I could still articulate my words and carry on a conversation.
For sure.
For the most
yeah,
part.
for sure.
So.
Now, Blasi was a legend. Blasi was one of the well-respected guys all the way around. Nobody had that bad to say about Blasi. And definitely, you were definitely one of them. All of our buddies were not that way. Most would either go down early, or in hindsight, we'd have wished they'd have went down early.
Oh, there were some that just had this ability to basically be passed out.
Just mummified. Our guitar player says that about Justin back in the day. He said, "Justin, you should get drunk." He'd do that old Arkansas Cobra. And that made me think about our buddies. They would be eyes closed standing there. And you'd be like, "Oh, won't you go on in there and sit down?" Don't tell me what to do. Have another beer. And it's like, for what? It's not going to do anything to you, Pokey.
Jay, I remember, and I may remember this wrong, but I have this memory of you pulling up down in Dozier, and did you have a Dodge truck?
I did
at
have a
one
green
point?
Dodge truck.
And I know this is for a fact, or if it wasn't you, I'm 99.9% sure it was. You had the very first DVD screen I've ever seen in any vehicle in my life.
Yep.
Like you pulled up, and I got in the truck with you, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And you're like, "Oh, this is a DVD player right there. I mean, mounted where the radio is." At the time, that was like 01, 2000, 2001. I mean, people didn't have those in their vehicles.
Right.
I mean, how did that come around? Like I was amazed by that. Like at the time, I had ideas. I was like, I know what I want to do. Let's get a Snoop Dogg record, and let's get all the music videos
And play them.
and then you can play the music and watch the video, which they'd never talked about distracted driving and all that stuff.
You had to have a switch over there by your emergency brake to flip to make it trick it into thinking the emergency brake was on so the DVD player would work. But I was always into stereos and stuff in high school, It was the 90s, man. Boom, boom. Everybody had to have some wire wheels and 212s in the trunk. So I always liked it. I would always end up, just checking it out and other people knew about it. So when I'd see that kind of stuff, I'm like, man, that would make my life better. And that's a purchase that might have to be made. I'm a pretty frugal guy, but I don't mind spending money for things I think will improve my life. Yeah. So the first one, it came out, and I think I had to pop it up, the original. The second one I had, it came out and folded itself. And one of the first ones I actually had that, and then I also had the Sega Dreamcast underneath the seat, so you could play video games in it too. I did. I swear.
I know that.
I promise you. Sega, and it was a Sega Dreamcast. So yeah, it was probably like 2000, 2001, maybe 99, 2000.
Wow.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, man, back then, in the dating scene, you having to drive all the way to Montgomery or Dothan to find something decent to eat, pop in a movie. Not too bad. Don't have much chit chat about. Let's watch the movie. If we like the movie, maybe we'll talk more,
That's back before it was frowned upon.
Frowned upon. Imagine if you had LED lights, like back in those days, the ambiance for that ride to Montgomery. My God,
Croc Myers.
Oh, Croc Myers! I remember those days.
Well, that seems like a good place to end the show. Tune in to the next episode where Chad and I continue visiting with JR and get even more insight into the music industry and, of course, a lot more funny stories. Thanks for tuning into the show, and don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review. It helps out more than you would ever know. We'll see you on the next one.